when I was writing the book, sometimes when sentences just didn't fall into place, I ended up writing in what was kind of a poem style, not rhyming, but it seemed to be a better way for me to express myself. You're dying, Mom. I guess I know. I won't admit it, not to myself, not to my brother, and certainly not to you. So many questions I should have asked. What keeps you going? Are you thinking about death? How can I bear this? I'm sitting here beside you, beside your hospital bed, my cheek against yours, so warm, so soft, soft like a baby's. You're going, Mom, and you haven't told me anything, nothing at all since they brought you here. I'm sitting here beside you. Speak to me. Open your eyes. Do you know I'm here? I'm holding your hand. Feel our hands touching. I'm sure you can. 9 years ago you were very sick. They said you were dying. I sat beside you just as I am now. I held your hand. I cried a lot. Don't go, Mom. I knew you wouldn't, even when they had me sign the do not resuscitate document and said I should call the priest. I knew you weren't going then, and you didn't. But I know you are now, and I don't know if I can bear it. And I did finally come to accept that she was dying. I had so many questions. I wanted now to really prepare myself for her death. I wanted to understand. And then eventually the shock sets in. You come to realize that your loved one is gone. And for me, just being me, I pushed all of my feelings, all of my emotions deep inside. At first I couldn't speak about Mom's death without crying, which seemed to embarrass most people. So I got in the habit of just saying, I'm fine, it's okay, I'm fine. And after a while people just stopped asking, how was I doing? It was 8 months later, in mid-November, before I realized that I needed help, that I couldn't go on pushing all my feelings deep down inside. Christmas was coming, and the idea of not celebrating with Mom was more than I could bear. I went to talk to a neighbor whose mother had died, and I knew that because this woman very wisely had put a death notice in the mailboxes of all the homes nearby, so we knew what was happening in her family. And I wondered afterwards, I wish I had done that. People would have known that my mother had died, that I was suffering her loss, that I needed help. Someone might have reached out to me and said, I'm sorry for your loss. Is there anything I can do? But instead I had made this, I won't call it a mistake because it was my nature. It was what I felt I had to do, just to push it down inside and not to talk about it. So I went in search of a grief counselor, and I had the good fortune of finding a wonderful, empathetic woman. And when I went to see her, she didn't try to explain my grief with, deep psychological terminology. She would just ask me, how are you? And that was a very, very difficult question to answer honestly. You get so in the habit of saying, how are you? I'm fine, I'm okay. And people sometimes don't listen when you try to truly answer the question. So how are you became kind of the signal for me to really give some thought about what I was going through. I have the privilege of speaking to different groups about grief and loss and bereavement. One of the most recent workshops that I did was with a group of professionals in the field of bereavement support, and what we spoke of was how difficult it is for people like yourselves who will, when you're out in your hospital or clinical environment, have to deal with your own grief and loss, as well as going back out there every day to support the people, the patients that you have to care for. I'm sure that many of you have dealt with loss and grief in your own lives, and I continue to mourn my mom's death. And I'd like to leave you just with these thoughts in particular. Recognize that life and death are a continuum. You are there not only to heal, but also to ease the path toward dying. Communicate in a timely and empathetic way with your patients who are dying and with their loved ones. Let them know the details of what's happening. People want to know what's going on. They would like answers to their questions. And learn all you can about palliative care and hospice services in your community, even if palliative medicine isn't the practice that you choose. I'd like to end just by reading a Mother's Day poem, and it's very different from the poem that I wrote when my mother first died. It's, I think, my own experience of moving to a new, more hopeful place in my life. My mother is dead. I'm no longer a daughter. Then who am I now? Loss of a role. Rebuild my life. Who will I become? No longer a daughter. Mom passed away. Celebrate. I am a mother. With daughters, celebrate our continuity. Mother's Day, Renewal. Thanks. It's really been great to speak to you.